afternoon, everybody. My name is Nicolas Serandour. I'm the CFO of Advanced Oncotherapy, or AVO PLC. Before I start, I need to show you a disclaimer which you are all familiar with. We are listed entities, so we have to be mindful about how we disclose and use the information. So first of all, who are we? We are a name-listed company with a market cap of about £100 million or $150 million. We're based in London with 50 people, and we actually have operations in the UK, Switzerland, where actually the bulk of the team is, and in the US. But we're also a CERN spin-off. CERN is arguably the largest physics laboratory in the world. They are mostly known for the Large Hadron Collider, which is the most powerful particle accelerator in the world. Just to put things in perspective, what you see here is a 27 kilometers ring below Geneva, which accelerates protons at 14 million mega electron volts, and they collide at 3 meters below the speed of light. We are using that technology in a much smaller scale, using another invention from CERN called the LIBO, and the LIBO is essentially what you're seeing on this big picture. It's a proton, it's a linear accelerators for protons. That's what we're actually using. What we've done is we actually have that technology which has been validated, and in fact, you are all welcome to go to CERN and actually see the machine and see actually that prototype. We aim at using that system or that technology to treat cancer patients, and the goal is to treat the first patients by the end of 2017. We are not doing this ourselves. You saw we are still a relatively small company in terms of the people, but we are very fortunate to work with extremely talented people, but also suppliers who have a very strong track records, whether it's Toshiba, whether it's spin-offs from Philips, and so on. Last but not least, even though we're actually going to treat only our first patients by the end of 2017, we already have purchase orders. The first purchase order is in London in Harley Street, but then we actually have 2 purchase orders in Wuhan City and Changchun, which we signed with a partner called Sinophi. And then at the same time as we announced the second purchase order, we also signed what we call these 4 framework agreements, which are essentially exclusivity agreements with a number of hospitals we have in China. And then we also have letters of exclusivity in Syracuse, which is in the state of New York. Now, let me just explain a little bit sort of what we are doing, and let's step back. If we are in the business of treating cancer, there's many statistics which are appalling, so it's about 20 million new cases a year, on average about 50% survival rate, and a cost which is close to $300 billion. There are 3 ways to treat cancer: medications, surgery, and radiotherapy, and we are in the latter part, which is radiotherapy, which has been used on average by, in up to 2/3 of the cases today. It's nothing new. It has been used for more than 100 years, but it has a major issues, which is about the side effect associated with radiotherapy. If I look at this chart looks at the tumor and how deep is the tumor within the body, and that's the dose of radiations. So if you actually imagine radiotherapy, which uses X-rays or photons, X-rays come at a high energy and gradually they lose all their energy. That has a major issue, because imagine if this is the tumor for a patient with a breast cancer, what this means is that if the tumor is on the left-hand side, all of these radiations will go straight to the heart, and it will create heart dysfunctions a number of years after. What you actually see here, you've got a high radiation dose at the entry of the body, and in fact, if you see patients who've undergone radiotherapy, in most cases you will see a burn on their skin. The same happens with many other indications. For men, prostate is also an issue because you've got the bladder in front. So there's another way to deliver radiotherapy, and it's to use a different particle called protons. So you just change one letter, but it actually makes a big difference. Protons have that characteristic, which is when they enter the body, they enter at a very low energy, And once they reach the tumor, you've got what you call this Bragg peak, which effectively corresponds to when all the radiation dose is getting delivered. That actually means that with protons, once all the radiation dose has been delivered on the tumor site, there's nothing left. So this is great because it has been used for many, many years. In fact, since 1954, many patients have been treated, more than 120,000 patients. And as you can imagine, it's particularly beneficial for children because obviously their metabolism grows much faster. And it's particularly relevant for hard-to-treat tumors. And the best examples would be the brain, because there's a lot of sensitive tissues. But there's only 54 centers in the world. And in fact, in the UK, there's only one which treats ocular tumors, which is a very rare tumor, a very rare cancer. Why is that? And I'm actually going to show you a video which actually explains the major issue with legacy technology. This is the patient. The patient has a tumor somewhere here. And what you see here is the beam of protons coming just straight onto the tumor, nothing coming out after. Okay, so it's highly targeted, no side effect, no collateral damage. That's what is required today. It's a huge facility, sometimes as big as a football pitch. Why is that? It's because you need a huge accelerators which has to be dug below the ground. It requires huge shielding, and it has to be put far away from the patients because there's a lot of radiation. Then those protons needs to be controlled in this control room. A lot of computers, a lot of staff. It's something which is extremely complex to maneuver and to deliver with the right precisions. Protons then get accelerated at 60% speed of light, and then they get transported through a system using a lot of very large and expensive magnets. And then those protons, they arrive to the treatment room, to the patient who is here. What you have to do when you actually treat a patient, you have to target the tumor from different angles. And that's what this big machine does. It's called a gantry, which, by the way, weighs up to 150 tons and will move by a few centimeters to make sure the target gets hit from different locations. What are the implications of all of this? The implication is that it's a great technology, but you can't have that technology in big cities. And more importantly, what you can see here is that it's extremely, extremely expensive. In fact, I think some of the centers who are using that technology, altogether, if you include the building cost, the price of the equipment, etc., we're actually talking about $200 to $300 million. What are the implications? The implication is, as I said, there are very few centers in the world. In fact, no facilities in the UK. The NHS, as a result, is sending about 150 patients every year, in particular in the US, at a treatment cost which is in excess of £100,000. Hospitals, what do? They want this technology, but they have to make the investment worthwhile. So they have to focus on the lucrative indications. The best lucrative indication is prostate, because you're dealing with a quick treatment time of 6 to 7 minutes, and you're dealing with patients who are older and wealthier. But in fact, you should be really using that technology for children. But unfortunately, with children, they need anesthesia, so the treatment time is longer. And parents are not so advanced in their lives, so they can't actually afford that treatment. And then hospitals are also trying to make their returns by having facilities open 24 hours a day, which is just not right when you're dealing with very sick patients. The implications of that is payers are simply pushing back. Why would they give a treatment at £100,000, whereas they could give or they could reimburse another treatment which is a third of that cost, even though the other treatment has a lower side effect or worse side effect profile? So what do new systems need to have? They need to be much more cost effective. And by cost, it's not only the purchase price, it's the building, the running cost, the maintenance cost, and everything. The systems have to be more flexible. As you've seen on the movie, we need to be able to install this machine in big cities. It's just not practical to have such a big centers today So that has to be changed. The system has to be more precise and dynamic, such that we can actually target the tumor much more effectively and again, reducing the side effect profile. And finally, it's important to be focused on an integrating system. I talked a lot about accelerations of protons, but once protons get accelerated, then there needs to be delivered to the patients with a CT scan, patient couch, a lot of different parts which are complex, which are helpful. Unfortunately today, all of those different parts are not linked together. And that's why many people actually hear stories about misplanning. And once this happens, a patient usually doesn't get the opportunity to get sort of a better treatment. So I'm now going to show you a video of our system in Pebble Mill in Birmingham. And that's what's being planned as we speak with a partner Circle. The drawings have slightly changed, but that's essentially where that's the hydrogen. So protons start from hydrogens, they get separated from electrons, and then they get to this first part called an injector. An injector starts putting some energy in the protons and starts aligning the protons in a line. That's the injector, and then what we are doing is we're adding a number of accelerating units. And the more accelerating units we add, the more energy protons had, the more energy then protons have, the deeper the tumor can be treated. Altogether, that machine is about 24 meters long. The beauty is that because it's modular, we can actually have the accelerator in a U shape if there is any technical constraints. In fact, that's actually what's happening in Harley Street, where the site is too small. So we have the accelerator, we are bending the beam, and then we've got the treatment room in the basement. Those different parts are being manufactured by a supplier, and you'll see a lot of copper, which is highly relevant in terms of cost going forward and optimizations. Protons then, when they coming out of the accelerator in the treatment rooms, what's happening? So you've got actually the CT scan here, which locates the tumor, and based on that, prepares a treatment planning system. That's going to basically communicate with the accelerator, and with the accelerator, which you see here, the end of the accelerator and this part called the nozzle, you can actually target the tumor then from different angles, and you do that because the patient couch is actually moving. The protons which come out here, you can actually change the energy 200 times per second. What this means? This means that if you have a patient who has a lung tumor, that tumor will move as he breathes. And because you can actually change the energy so rapidly, it actually means that you avoid all the surrounding healthy tissues. The implications of that is that you can deliver more radiations in just one visit. The hospitals can therefore get more patients, and everybody wins. So that's about the technology. So to conclude, if I actually look at here what we discussed about what are really important to today disrupt the market. In terms of cost, in terms of the equipment, we are cheaper because a machine in Harley Street is being sold at £23 million. Okay? So in comparison to a competitor, we are cheaper, and that's because of the accelerator, which is much easier to build. The building cost becomes much more striking. There's going to be a center in London commissioned by the NHS. The building cost is a contract of £190 million. It's going to take 2 years to pour concrete on site. In contrast, we're going to put a machine in Harley Street in arguably the most challenging part, which is two listed adjacent buildings. The building cost is £7 million, and that's actually borne by the owner of the site, Howard A. Walden. The running cost then becomes also much lower because we're accelerating protons in a linear way. So imagine in a circular accelerator, protons go at speed of light, or 60% speed of light. Every time they hit a fixed part, it creates neutrons. And because it creates neutrons, then you need big shielding. And as a result of that, you need a lot of staffing to maintain those machines and to run them. We don't have that issue because we are a linear accelerator. More flexible, that's exactly what the point I made earlier, which is if you can actually have an accelerator which you can shape the way you want, it means you can actually put this accelerator pretty much everywhere you want. And in fact, the goal is to put these machines in big cities where patients live. I talked about the precisions. We can change the energy 200 times per second. In comparison with the systems which are on the markets today, you can change them 2 to 3 times per second. And then it's a more integrated system. How are we doing it? Well, first of all, proton therapy is nothing new. And in fact, that's a picture of what you can see at CERN. So we don't need to redemonstrate that proton therapy works. It has been used for many, many years. We rely on a team which has a very strong experience. And just to name a few, Professor Steve Myers joined us a couple of months ago. He's actually the main architect of the Large Hadron Collider. So on YouTube, actually, you can even see Mr. Myers. So he's been involved, 40 years of experience in accelerators. Professor Hanne Kui is a professor at Harvard. He's been treating patients with proton therapy for 25 years. Professor Ugo Amaldi is a very famous scientist in Italy. In fact, his father signed the CERN treaty. He has been really the founder of that technology and so on. Nick Ploman was actually on the BBC this weekend. There was a lot of news following these studies in the Lancet about the side effect of proton therapy applied to brain tumor. And there's a very long list of advisors. And then, as I said, we are not doing this ourselves. We are using a number of partners, Toshiba, VDL, which is a spin-off from Philips, Siemens, PQ, etc. Some of the names you may not know, but they have a very strong track record in radiotherapy. Our goal is to ensure that once we have a first machine in Harley Street being delivered, because of this pipeline, we really want to make sure we can install the machine as quickly as possible. So our goal in terms of execution is to work with a big partner who's going to supervise those different sub-suppliers and really help us driving costs down and accelerating the sales ramp-up. I finish with one slide. Today, just to look at the potential. Today, you have 54 centers. With one center, you have about sort of 2 to 3 rooms. So today in the world, you can be treated in any of these 120 treatment rooms. The global need is 13,000 treatment rooms, and that's not even our estimates, that's market studies. Our view is that we can deliver a treatment at a cost which is less than £35,000. That's actually below the long-term NHS guidance. And we can do that because of all the different points I mentioned about cost. So what we want is to make treatment accessible and not hear stories that we heard with this little boy, Ashia King, who had to be kidnapped by his parents to get treated. We want to make that treatment affordable for everybody and not just a minority of people. Thank you.